All right, it's Earth Day today, a chance to raise awareness about the environment.
And to celebrate the natural wonders of the world.
Like Mount Everest, the highest peak in the world, and just one of the 7 mountains climbed in record time by our next guest, Vanessa O'Brien. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Long journey for you to get here. We were just reviewing it. But now I want to get this right. You broke the record as a woman for climbing 7 highest peaks on 7 continents, as well as walking to both poles, and that's called the Explorer's Grand Slam. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, but now you started mountaineering only 3 years ago, which I think is just incredible. So what made you so interested in this?
That's right. So for me, it was really the recession that took me out of a job, and I was looking for something that was goal-oriented. And someone suggested, how about Mount Everest? And I thought, oh my God, you know, this is ridiculous. I could never do this. I know nothing about mountaineering. And then I just thought about it, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I went and I learned as much as I could about Everest and about mountaineering. I went and I took a mountaineering course in New Zealand. I was living in Hong Kong at the time. And I just learned as much as I could, and then I applied those skills, ironically, on Everest. And my first time up, I failed in that I wasn't able to get to Camp 2, which was my goal. I got involved in an avalanche and became very hypoxic and very ill with pulmonary edema. Had to come down, and but that taught me a very important lesson, which was that what I was about to take on was bigger than what I expected. And I went back and I changed my training. I changed everything that I needed to know. I went and I accumulated that knowledge. And then I just went back and retrained and
No, you went back and you set the record, is what you did.
That's right.
Like, that is so amazing. So what did that feel like for you?
Well, it was incredible. When I went back to see what it was like at high altitude. So I went back to, there are 14 8,000-meter peaks in the world. They're all in the Himalayas. I went back to number 14 and number 6. I was able to do those 2 back to back. That showed me I was ready for Everest. And then I did do Everest back in May 19th of 2012. There were 10 deaths that year. Wow. That day, in fact, which was the 4th highest on record. Yeah. And then I learned about something called the 7 summits, which was climbing the 7 highest peaks on the 7 continents. At that point, I thought, literally, it's all downhill from here. Yeah. Because, you know, that is the highest.
Because you broke the record for a woman. How do you walk that fine line between keeping yourself safe and healthy enough to finish, and also for record time, because you're really trying to go as fast as you can, but trying to stay safe as you can. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the mountains have a certain time when they can be climbed. Okay. So Everest, for example, has a certain season. It's now, in fact, April and May, and that's because the jet streams move over, which allow a climbing period in Nepal in May. There's another time that opens up in the fall. So. Same with Denali, same with certain times of the year when things happen. So as it happened, these things opened up where I was able to go and climb them almost back to back.
No, but this is different, though. I mean, you've got 7 peaks, and that's height and that's elevation. What about the North Pole, though?
Yeah.
How do you train? Do you just call Santa and see? I mean, how do you train to go to the North Pole?
Well, they're very different things. So the North Pole and South Pole are more about endurance, right, which is very different than high altitude. High altitude, your training is more cardiovascular. You don't want as much muscle because...
Is that why you're training on the beach here?
Okay, so yes, on the beach is training. What I'm doing there is simulating pulling a tire, which is simulating pulling a sled, which is what we do on the North and South Pole. This is over in Revere Beach outside of Boston. In this case, I'm pulling maybe 75 pounds, and I'm using the sand as friction.
How long will you do that in a training session? Do you do that for hours?
Whoa, look at that.
Probably 3 to 4 hours, because what I need to do is I need to build up something that will ultimately be 8 plus or minus 8 miles, because we'll be doing probably 10 to 12 miles in a day, on an actual day.
Well, now, Vanessa, you just mentioned that you're from, you were in Boston in that footage, and you're actually from Boston. Can you tell us how you found out the news of the bombings last week?
Yeah, so what happened was we had reached the North Pole the day after the bombings, but we didn't know about the bombings because there's no communications. So I had brought the Red Cross flag with me to the summit. Well, I say summit, but to the North Pole.
Oh wow, look at it.
And this was the Red Cross of Eastern Mass. And when we got back to Borneo and then took the helicopter and then a plane over back to Spitsbergen, was the first time I saw the press. Now, the press was all in Norwegian, which is not my native tongue. All I could read was 2 words, and that was Boston Marathon, and I could see the depictions of these horrid pictures of the day. And I just picked up the phone and tried to call my husband and find out what had gone on, and he was the first to tell me what had happened, and it was just awful. And it happened the day before. I just can't even imagine, because if I were in Boston that day, I would have attended that event, and where would I have wanted to be? I would have wanted to be at the finish line, because that's where you're welcoming people who come through, and I think it's awful, and it was hard to want to celebrate something. The only thing I could think of was to try to turn that flag and that victory of reaching the pole into something that was more unified and more maybe against terrorism and against the bombers, and to say with the rest of Boston and stand up against it and say, you know, we're better than this and we're greater than this, and we'll get through that tragedy. And of course, they put together the One Fund and all of that, which people have been great to rally around.
Well,
wonderful.
we commend you on your efforts, and we will be watching you as you continue to, I'm sure, climb. So thank you, Vanessa O'Brien, for being here, and for this segment and much more. Just visit our website, WLNY-TV.com/thecouch, and lots more is coming.